and we have this old building collapsing. I think possibly the movie could have gotten away with the more small-scale action sequence I understand why they did what they did, because it's sort of a part of the formula, if you will. But I think they could have gotten away with something a bit more small-scale.
Yeah, probably, but I think it simply works because how this scene ends on a very dark note.
Yeah, and it's also a line lifted from the book, "The bitch is dead," which of course Bond says in the movie as well, but it doesn't end there. In the book, that's the final line of the entire piece. He decides to go back into the service, and he's going to hunt down, essentially the bad guys. And he says to one of his contacts that now it doesn't matter, the bitch is dead, and that's it. But of course, in the film, we have more of a triumphant ending, I guess you could say.
He goes through stuff, and as I said, Vesper has left him Mr. White's contact info.
Yeah, and also in the book, she did have a boyfriend, so they actually mirror that in the movie. It's not exactly the same, but her motivation was the same. So I think that was also interesting that they did keep that. And then, of course, it ends with we see Mr. White, he gets shot, and Bond enters, and we hear the Bond theme. So it's a really nice ending. Although the tragedy, it does feel triumphant in a way, although it is still tragic.
Yeah, but we do get a feeling that now he's fully formed. It doesn't spell it out quite as the novel does with the whole Fleming line of now he's going to go after the hand that holds the whip and the gun. Mm-hmm. The reason that spy spies, the pressure, the enemy behind. Now we actually see him confront the hand that holds the whip, that is Mr. White.
For sure.
And we get the first Daniel Craig saying the name's Bond. James Bond.
Yeah.
And it feels earned. And as you point out, the Bond theme kicks in fully for the first time. Which neatly brings us into David Arnold's score.
Exactly, yes.
We don't get the full Bond theme until this, but you don't really miss it. I don't. Because, first of all, this is how brilliantly he and Chris Cornell wrote You Know My Name. Because it kind of mirrors the Bond theme in quite a lot of ways, and that's how you get scenes that like blunt instrument track on the soundtrack that plays from Bond is sitting in M's apartment, and we cut to Bahamas. Mm-hmm. There you have little small hints of the bass line going dum, dum.
Yeah.
And when he's trying out his tux for the first time, you also get a piece of it. When the train arrives in Montenegro, you also get a little piece of it. So it's hints over here and there when Bond does a little Bondian thing, but they keep us hungry until it says Bond, James Bond, and the end credits kick in.
Yeah, and also the theme song is beautifully interwoven into the soundtrack. You do hear certain chords reappear, so it lends itself very well to the rest of the soundtrack. I mean, and that I actually had on my little memory list talking about also the title sequence, which of course, as you mentioned, features You Know My Name by Chris Cornell, and it's in a way also the theme songs tend to be sung by female singers or vocalists. There's just a couple of times where we had male singers. We had Tom Jones, we had Duran Duran, we had Chris Cornell, and of course
Paul McCartney and the Wings.
Yes. So, but it's a really cool song, and I remember David Arnold spoke in an interview that, of course, the idea was, well, you got to include the title in the theme song, but there was his reasoning was, well, first it was kind of a very specific name, but he also felt that the film was about so much more than just the casino. It was about Bond being Bond or becoming Bond. So they that was the approach in creating the song.
Yeah, and also you kind of get an idea from the song that the Dryden, the Bond kills at the beginning, was the previous 007, because the lyric is that I will replace you.
Yeah.
I struggle to remember the lead into that particular line in the song, but it kind of reflects him becoming 007. Is taking Dryden's place.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit earlier regarding the title sequence, because this was also quite kind of a change, because I think, off the top of my head, I would say that every Bond title sequence up to this point had, well, dancing ladies or female silhouettes and whatnot. But this time it's Bond essentially, and Bond fighting henchmen, and you have all these cards flying about and the beautiful animation. I think, as you pointed out, we see Vesper at one point. Her face appears briefly in the title sequence.
Rhymes well with the fact that we're seeing Bond's origin. It's very focused on Bond's journey here.
Yeah.
So you kind of scale back the sexualization of the pre-title sequence and simply kicks in, like one on Batman. It's a mood piece.
For sure.
It's the more grounded.
Sure. And I think, yeah, the world moved on. I mean, I would say I didn't really think about it until I sort of looked at it again, and just it occurred to me. But I mean, if you look at some of the, especially the HD and 4K, some of the earlier title sequences are pretty raunchy. I mean, you have more or less naked women running around in Russian like submarine hats and whatnot.
You know, with 4K and HD, you suddenly, those silhouettes, as we pointed out in Batman, you know, brightness has been spiked up a bit in the masters and remastering for those formats. So suddenly, hang on, I can see pubic hair.
Yeah, so that was a change, of course, but it's nevertheless a beautiful sequence. There's two things that always struck me, and this is very random, but I'm gonna mention it anyway. That's one of the figures is against a blue background and it's a yellow head, and it always reminds me of the packaging for Kalles Caviar, which, if you don't know, in Sweden we actually call it fish roux spread. But it looks very much like the logotype for the. I will put up pictures you guys can see. And there's also one where a guy gets shot and blood spills out, and that forms sort of an R, which looks almost exactly as the logotype for Radiotjänst, which is sort of used to handle Swedish television fees. Now it's handled by the Swedish tax agency. But I will put up screenshots so you guys can see. You can't unsee it when you. Oh dear God! Do I dare watch this video when you load it up later?
Never noticed that.
Yeah, no. Well, you will see it when I put it up. I thought it was kind of funny, but it is a great title sequence, which is kind of ironic because I think what we're getting in Quantum of Solace is one of the worst, both comes to song and how these titles are designed. But it also comes from the fact that for some reason Mark Forster didn't want to use Daniel Kleinman, who has done the title sequence since GoldenEye. He also did, actually kind of funny, direct the music video for License to Kill back in the day. He did, yes.
But for some reason, Hip was put on hold for that movie. But it does great work here.
Oh, for sure. And also, I mean, since we're talking about the title, we could also mention this film was edited by Stuart Baird. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce the name, but quite an accomplished director also, having done Executive Decision with Kurt Russell and U.S. Marshals. But so he edited this movie, and the beginning was essentially used to because I think there were scenes on the DVD where you see more of Bond killing the contact of Dryden, but I decided to intercut that, so we start with Dryden, of course, and that's a much better way of putting together that sequence. So it just shows the power of editing.
Yeah, he's a great editor, which is I find it kind of funny in a meta sense that how he edits this one, and we get Quantum of Solace, which one of the heavy critiques for Quantum of Solace is how sharp editing is.
Yeah. And
for Skyfall, Stuart Baird is back again. So sorry, we got the great guy back, so please.
For sure. And I guess we could talk a little bit, since we're talking about Quantum, the legacy of Casino Royale, which is kind of because I felt it cast a very long shadow because it set the bar so high for the Craig era, and in a sense, I don't know if the subsequent films ever sort of stepped out of that shadow. Starting with Quantum. Quantum is essentially an epilogue to Casino Royale, and maybe not a very good one.
I can agree there that there is a shadow that this movie put on the rest of the Craig era. And as you point out, Quantum of Solace as an epilogue, it has risen in esteem by fans since 2008. But you do kind of feel that they wanted too much on too little time. Here's also the part that hurt that movie is you don't really set a release date like that and rush through it. They could have postponed Quantum and helped that movie quite a lot.
Yeah.
But let's point out, as an epilogue, they kind of stretch out his arc in this movie into the next one as well. And in some parts it's work, like the scene they took from the Casino Royale novel into Quantum of Solace when they are talking on the plane and in Italy, Mattias and Bond. And like that ending scene in Canada is also great scenes, like they add to it, but sort of Quantum of Solace feels like it's on repeat and it's rushing things. And then of course you get Skyfall, where we suddenly, I think Skyfall casts a bigger shadow with its theme of an aging Bond trying to fit in the modern world, because it's kind of sad we only get 2 movies with Daniel Craig's Bond in his prime before he's tired and they question why he's doing it. But Skyfall gets away with it, with how it's kind of reintroduces Q, Moneypenny and all that, so it still makes it feel relevant. I don't know how you feel about these two before we talk about what the legacy put on Spectre and No Time to Die.
I feel like Quantum was, as you said, the editing was very much in the Bourne formula, like shaky cam, quick cuts, and I guess Bond gets some closure when it comes to Vesper, but I don't know if suppose that Casino Royale would have been followed up with a standalone adventure, would we really miss Quantum? I don't think so. I think he sort of came to grips with her betrayal and her sort of, as you said, she points him to Mr. White, so she sort of redeems herself in the end. And Skyfall, again, great film. It's, but I still hold Casino Royale higher. I think for me the problem was that Casino Royale dwells deep into Bond's psyche, and I think then the other films felt that they also need to delve into Bond's psyche, with Bond going back home for Skyfall, and we learn more about him. And once you set down that path of always having Bond evolving, eventually you sort of run out of stuff for him to do, and come, No Time to Die, he once again visits Vesper's grave, or not once again, he visits Vesper's grave to sort of come to terms with her betrayal. And I felt like, didn't we see this already?
Yeah, I can agree that stretching out with Vesper, forgiving her into Quantum of Solace, kind of messes with the idea that you're going for in No Time to Die, because that is a Fleming idea. It's pointed out, actually, it's not even pointed out, it happens in the beginning of Her Majesty's Secret Service, the book, that he is. It is revealed that he once a year visits her grave to remind himself what he's doing, what he's doing, and try to, forgive himself.
Yeah.
For letting it happen. So, on this pilgrimage, he meets his future wife, Tracy Bond, in the beginning of that book. And actually, that casino is the casino for Casino Royale. It is the same casino that he meets Tracy. So it's more relevant in the books. And I think No Time to Die and Spectre tried to play it into that. But as you point out, I don't think Madeleine Swan hits the same note as Vesper or Tracy does.
No, I agree. And then you had this whole thing with sort of retrofitting this in Spectre. It turns out that Blofeld was behind this all along, and the architect of all your pain, which also felt like and Quantum was suddenly sort of a sub organization to Spectre. So it felt like it was just a bit too much. I know I read an interview, I think it was Craig, who said that they tried to do a standalone film, but they always felt that they need to continue Bond's arc. And you know, in the end of it all, you know, you have 5 films with just their own story, and I suppose they will reboot it this time unless they figure out a way to have Bond, spoiler alert, of course, for No Time to Die, but of course Bond dies. Or did he? Maybe he's out there somewhere.
What I think would have helped the Craig era a bit more is, like, I think they abandoned Quantum too fast after regaining the rights to Spectre, because to go back a little bit, we talked about earlier how Ken McClure owned the rights to Thunderball after the legal battle where Ian Fleming used their script ideas into making the book Thunderball. When he passed away, his family decided to sell back those rights to the Fleming estate and basically back to Eon. So they had the rights to Spectre, so I think you would have needed one more movie to establish the Quantum and Spectre connection, because right now it feels like, oh, we have this idea, we throw it out to have this idea, so it's very haphazardly put together, that continuity. Mm-hmm. Like, you could have used another movie with where they escape Mr. White plays a part, and then you can have that leading into his daughter in the next movie and all that. Mm-hmm. And then you get to see, okay, here's what been controlling Mr. White, so you see that is a big part of the cog instead of just a throwaway line. And I don't know how you felt about it, but that ring in Spectre, that suddenly, oh, Le Chiffre, Mr. White, Dominic Green, Silva, all of them have had this ring.
Yeah.
You go like, what? So we obviously talked about how this is one of our favorite Bond movies, how we rank it in our top 5, top 3, but how would you rank, say, Daniel Craig among the James Bond? Is he a bigger favorite? Is he a lesser favorite? We could talk his performance here compared to other performances, or you can, you know, his whole era if you like.
Great question. I think you tend to gravitate towards the actor you grew up with. So for me, it's Roger Moore, but Daniel Craig was a great Bond for this era. I'm not sure Roger Moore, if we had a young Roger Moore in some alternate timeline, he would have worked as well. I would say probably my ranking of the actors is probably, I would say Roger Moore, Craig, and Dalton, probably. But and it's sort of heresy to not include Sean Connery in the top 3, but it's so close. I mean, it's hard to say that someone did a bad job. I mean, George Lazenby only got 1 try, and I think he did a good job for what he was, you know, since he had very little acting experience. I think he does a fine job. So how would you rank Craig?
Simply based on this movie, I think he's among the top tier. If you look at his as a whole, it kind of goes with the writing where his Bond leans. But if we're gonna talk his whole era, I'll probably go Connery, Dalton, then Craig. It's simply because you have a lot of fans have reevaluated Timothy Dalton since Casino Royale and then Craig came out, because he is the one that most closely follows the Fleming pattern for the Fleming style of Bond. And Casino Royale is one of those that really follows the journey of Bond in the book over Bond to the movie. So that's why I can rank his performance here as one of the better Bond performances for a movie. When it comes to his whole era, it kind of drops a little, simply because the direction they take it, Foster Brother and all that, kind of drags down what is essentially a great performance.
Yeah, for sure. It's because each actor was a Bond for their time, so it's hard to compare. And you also colored a bit by the movies they starred in. I mean, you could say that Pierce Brosnan, for my money, his best Bond was GoldenEye, and then it sort of was a bit uneven, but he didn't end on a high note exactly.
He got more to chew on in The World Is Not Enough, actor-wise. Tomorrow Never Dies, he had a nice flow. He had a nice flow on GoldenEye, hitting all the beats. But as you point out, they kind of parody himself in Die Another Day. Pierce is a great Bond. As you pointed out, they're all great. It's more personal taste that puts them on different slots.
Yeah.
Even Lazenby has some great points that he does.
Yeah, for sure.
When it comes to villains, how would you rank Chiffre among the Bond villains? Like, is he in your top 5? Is he in the middle? Where do you put him?
Actually, I think I'm going to hand that question over to you first, so I can have time to think. Because this is a tough one.
Like, he's in the upper half, for sure. But, you know, he's a bit more subdued. You do get the more colorful villains, like Goldfinger will always be at the top, because how big of a performance physically Gert Fröbe does, and his I'm drawing a blank who dubbed the voice, but the dub actor really matches that energy quite well. So yeah. Goldfinger is like the gold standard. I think Red Grant is very underrated for what he does, even though you kind of argue that he's a henchman. So I think he's in the top 10 definitely. I'm not sure where, but he's not in the top 5, top 3, because you do get more colorful characters that fit that criteria. I think the best villain Daniel Craig's James Bond has met is probably Silva, because how deranged he is. But he is one of the better ones, Le Chiffre. How do you feel about him now that you have a moment to think?
You have to take a lot of things into account. Also, I mean, it's not just the actor; it's the plot, their impact on the story. I would say he is in my he is in the top 10 for sure. I mean, and it's. I would say favorite. I'm probably gonna regret whatever I say. I'm gonna regret once we finish recording, but I would probably. You could say Alex Trevelyan from GoldenEye was pretty good.
Great one.
Great villain as well. Regarding the Moore era, probably Max Zorin, even though the movie is flawed, but Christopher Walken puts on such a great show. So he's very memorable. That's probably my favorite Bond villain.
That's interesting, because when it comes to Roger Moore, my favorite villain is also from one of the lesser liked movies. I think Christopher Lee is brilliant in The Man with the Golden Gun. Not the movie per se, but he is the standout thing about that movie when it comes to Roger Moore's villains.
For sure. And that's what makes it so hard, because you in the back of your mind, you're always sort of measuring the quality of the movie itself. But still, if Man with the Golden Gun, which is one of my lesser favorites, but imagine him being in a slightly better movie. That could have been amazing. So Bond girl, Vesper, where would we place her?
I think it's safe to say I can put Vesper as number 1. It's her Tracy. Because Diana Rigg does quite a lot of heavy lifting, and she faces out that character in that movie quite a bit as well. What puts Vesper above Tracy is she has a better Bond to play off against.
That's true.
You do have chemistry between Lazenby and Diana Rigg, but the experience and that confidence that Daniel Craig brings into relationship with Vesper makes that more of a equal footing.
For sure.
Relationship. That's why I think it makes Vesper the top. Simply because we get to know where we go on a journey with her as well as Bond. So she has that three-dimensionality.
I think many of the interesting Bond women, if you will, is sort of the fish out of water characters. Maybe not necessarily someone who is with the CIA or KGB, but someone who gets thrown into things like you have, for example, Natalia in GoldenEye, Isabella Scorupco. She's not an agent. She just gets flung into things, and she grows to the occasion. So I would say she's probably my favorite if I had to choose. But and Vesper is in the same mold. She's not an agent or some martial arts expert, but she's there, representing the government. But we know, of course, then that she's treacherous. But she's in that same mold of character, which grows with the occasion. Natalia is my number 1, and Vesper is probably a close second, I would say. I think Tracy's up there, but I don't watch that movie a whole lot. So maybe I need to reevaluate. But of course, Diana Rigg is a great actress, and she has some great scenes, so she's high up there as well.
So, how would you rank the pre-title sequence among the other pre-title sequences?
Oh, wow. But that's also a really good question. Well, it's up there high, and I like the way they implement the gun barrel logo, which then became a running theme throughout the Craig era. Where do we place the gun barrel? And they never seem to figure out exactly where to place it. But no, it's ranked pretty high. I would say probably what could match. I would say GoldenEye probably is up there as well. It's sort of sometimes comparing apples to oranges, because I mean the pre-title sequence in Casino Royale doesn't have a whole lot of action, but it has the tension and it's beautifully shot in black and white. But if you would rank this title sequence as, you know, with purely action, then of course GoldenEye would edge it out. But this works for this movie, so it's for sure one of the top three, I would say.
Yeah, it's like say apples and oranges, because the pre-title sequences has served two purposes throughout the years. It's either setting up something that will pay off later. Tomorrow Never Dies has encoder that will play a big part in later in the movie, for example. GoldenEye has introduction of 006, which we later on will learn is the villain. You do get the man with the golden gun also has setting up, but then you also have this silly bit of fun aspect of the pre-title sequence, where you just get the climax of another adventure, like Goldfinger blowing up Goldfinger, he blows up the heroin factory. So it depends what you want from that title sequence. If it looks for serving the purpose of the story, yeah, it's up there. Mm-hmm. Together with GoldenEye, Martin Campbell, once again. If you look for silly bit of fun action, The Spy Who Loved Me is kind of... No, that's set up as well. Because Triple X's boyfriend gets killed trying to kill Bond in the beginning of that. So that probably shouldn't come. But that is also a great one with the great ending of the parachute with the Union Jack.
Yeah. And I can mention one more thing regarding the movie, regarding the action. That's one thing I think it does really good. The action scenes feels organic in the story. I feel like some of the Bonds, particularly maybe the Brosnan era, the action sequence sometimes felt a bit mechanically placed. For example, The World Is Not Enough is sort of like we're going skiing. Oh, threat from above, cue an action sequence. Later in that movie, at the caviar factory, they have a talk. Oh, threat from above, cue an action sequence. Here it feels more organic. Bond is spying on someone, there is a chase, Bond listens to the microphone at the hotel and comes across, of course, the Chiffre being confronted by the bad guys. So it doesn't feel out of place.
No, it's an escalation of stakes naturally throughout Casino Royale. He's here, it leads to this, here's an hindrance. It's a bit like I mentioned in the book about dramatic storytelling I read in college in the last video. He talks about intrigue like such is a river.
Yeah.
The story is a river, and the intrigue is every crook, every crocodile, every rush flood, every hindrance in that river is intrigue. So it has to come naturally. We're going around this bend and suddenly there's a waterfall, which in this, to put that metaphor in, yes, he follows this bomb maker in Miami and suddenly we have this action scene at the airport.
Yeah.
So it needs to come naturally from that. Escalating stakes.
Yeah.
Not like, oh shit, is that a helicopter?
Yeah. And that's not a knock on that movie, it's just some of the examples I came up with. But this has been a great talk, and we could probably go on for a couple more hours. But I think we should talk about Bond again, maybe one of the more flawed ones, and we can have all the nicky-picky stuff.
We could go back to Die Another Day since we have been bashing it through, but we probably shouldn't decide before we announce in this video what we'll talk about the next time, but that's an idea.
Yeah, if you made it this far listening to us, put in the comments section if there is a Bond movie you want us to talk about, and we'll see if we get any further replies.
Yeah, is there any point where you disagree with us on? Go ahead. Like, the funny thing about the James Bond series is no one's ranking is like any other person's. Like, a lot of people can put Goldfinger number 1, but suddenly you get For Hours Only as number 2 from that guy. But that guy probably puts You Only Live Twice, and that guy takes The Living Daylights. So,
but anyhow, if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to us. Do you have any parting words, Tobias?
Oh, grow up, 007.
Yeah, well said.